One of the coolest plays of the year will probably become a forgotten play, given how the game ended. Chris Brown on the call there. He joins us now on the Western Hotline on a Football Friday. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving, Chris. I'm still full. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I am still very full. I might even be a little bloated, actually. I went overboard. It was not good.
The call for dessert on Thanksgiving night is always like, oh, really? We need this too? But then you feel like you gotta. So a lot of football too yesterday, Chris. Really, the Ravens and the Chiefs both losing. I guess you can even include the Lions in that. You got a lot of great quarterbacks and great teams that is as bad as things have gone at times for the Bills this year. I mean, there are teams that are in worse shape in terms of making the playoffs, and Kansas City is definitely one of them.
Yeah, some teams that we are accustomed to seeing in the postseason the last few years are in some real jeopardy right now. But I think by no means are they out of it because of how tightly compacted this AFC conference race is. And all you need to know as far as how volatile the last 5-6 weeks of this season are going to be for the AFC conference race. Basically, Baltimore went from 4-10, and Pittsburgh went from 10-4 last night just by virtue of the Ravens' loss. That is insane, and I think we're going to see more of that here down the stretch.
If the Bills win on Sunday, I think it'll flip right back, right? Because then you'd have both teams at 6-6. So
yeah,
that could happen very quickly. So on this game on Sunday, Chris Brown with us on the Western Hotline, Bills and Steelers on Sunday. I think maybe one of the biggest stories, Chris, and this is yet to be determined. Sean McDermott will be on a little bit later, and we'll get some game designations. But the Bills, fresh off a game where they couldn't really protect Josh Allen, maybe not having either of their starting offensive tackles. How big a blow do you think that'll be to maybe not have one and possibly not have either, Dawkins or Brown?
Yeah, if you don't have both, that's going to be a real tough row to hoe. Not because you don't have depth at the position, but just because the guys that have represented your depth have had so little action over the last 2 or 3 years, because these guys, to a large degree, have barely missed any time. The starting five has missed 2-man games since 2020, since the start of 2024, and that was Spencer Brown in both cases, the Kansas City game last year and then the game earlier this season. And then you have to go back to week 18 of the year before that when Deion Dawkins came out for a lacerated hand in the Miami game and then came back in and finished. They've been extraordinarily healthy, particularly at the tackle positions. But now it's looking like Ryan Vandermark is a given to be starting this weekend, and then we'll have to see if they need to plug another player in. And there are probably 3 candidates for that role on Sunday. You're probably looking at either the rookie Chase Lunt, who's been a healthy and active much of the year, Tylen Grable, who's still on IR as of now but began practicing this week fully, and then Alec Anderson, I think, is another option because of his experience at right tackle. He was a 3-year starter at UCLA and played right tackle in college. It's not something that he projected to in the NFL, but at this point, you're in a little bit of a desperate measure, and I think he would be a viable candidate as well for Sunday.
Okay, good info on that. I didn't know he had that experience, so that could be where they end up. And the Steelers have some good pass rushers. And Chris McDermott, really, since the end of the Texans game, has talked about the hits that Allen took and adjusting in terms of pass protection. How do you think that will look? Between maybe how they change how many guys do block, or it could even just be focusing more on the run game, especially early?
Yeah, I'm very curious because I think we have to believe that if both tackles are out of this game, people should remember those 2 guys are a pretty critical part of the run game too. Especially for their pin and pull schemes. I think you have to give those guys help, because you don't know in what ways, play call wise, you can rely upon them just because you haven't seen enough of them. Not to mention the fact that it's not just going to be T.J. Watt. It looks like Alex Highsmith is coming back from his pectoral injury. He's been a full participant in practice, so it looks like he'll be back in the lineup. So they'll have their bookend pass rushers plus Nick Herbig, who kind of comes in as a third wave and has 6.5, 7 sacks on the season himself. So they'll have their hands full there. And, yeah, I do expect them to run the ball. conversely, I expect the Steelers to run the ball 40 times. Mike Tomlin's going to take one look at this run defense on film and in the rankings, and he's going to just try to run the football, mix in Aaron with a couple of throws here and there, and hope his defense gets takeaways, which they've done in outstanding fashion this year. They got 20 takeaways in 11 games, and they're right near the top of the league. So that's the game he wants to play. Run the ball, get some takeaways, steal possessions away from the Bills, and hope you have more points at the end.
Chris Brown with us. It could be a slow game in that way. The Steelers, too, because they're managing this injury to Aaron Rodgers with a left wrist injury, broken bones in there, and we'll see what he's able to do. Before he even picked up the injury, Chris, what was your impression of how it's gone for him in Pittsburgh so far this year? It's definitely seemed more, I mean, he is 42, game manager-esque than, of course, you've seen from him earlier in his career.
Yeah, they got off to a pretty good start and then kind of struggled to score points here through the middle portion of the season. And so I think they're hoping to rediscover some of what worked well at the beginning of the year for them. But it's very clear that Rodgers, maybe now more than ever, wants to get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. I think he's one of the fastest to release the football after the snap in the entire league. Very often he will throw to a spot in anticipation of the receiver getting there by the time the ball arrives. So it's very clear he does not want to take hits. I think he knows his own vulnerabilities because he's no longer able to escape the way he used to from the pocket when pressure, collapses the pocket. And we should mention, the Bills aren't the only team that are going to be without a tackle. Mm-hmm. Broderick Jones has already been declared out by Mike Tomlin, their left tackle, so they'll have a backup there on the left side of their offensive line, which, is obviously Rodgers' blind side. So, you could maybe dial up some pressure packages of your own and get home to Rodgers and see if you can rattle him that way.
The defensive personnel, too. So maybe no Terrell Bernard in this game. He hasn't practiced yet this week. It would probably be a surprise if he did. So right. Shaq Thompson and maybe 3 linebackers, because the Steelers with Arthur Smith love to play more than one tight end.
Right. And their tight ends are pretty big, especially Darnell Washington. So they're going to have to keep an eye out for, the strength of the formation and how they're going to use that. But knowing that the Bills are likely to be without their 2 offensive tackles, maybe a receiver or 2, maybe Kincaid, and knowing how the Steelers want to enter this game, I think we're looking at a rock fight here, Joe. I mean, I just think these guys are just going to try to pound on each other and see which team gives way or makes a mistake or commits a turnover. And why wouldn't you think that way if you're Pittsburgh? Because the Bills have had multiple turnovers in all but one of their road games this season, that being the Carolina game.
Last thing for you, Chris. The receiver injuries, Palmer's got this injury, and Samuel, too. Cooks is new, so it feels like Coleman probably will get back in, even just out of necessity. I wonder if his role will be any different, because if your receivers available that have experience in your system are Davis, Shavers, Coleman, and then Shakir. I mean, I got 3 big-bodied perimeter receivers, and I don't know, like, do you think one of those guys is maybe playing a role that's a little bit different?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I think if Kincaid is down, with the extra time that the offensive staff had on the mini bye, do they experiment with one of those bigger players in the slot and kind of have a big slot opposite Shakir on the other side? I think that could be a wrinkle that we see. I don't know who that would be, whether it's Coleman, Shavers. But, yeah, the Palmer injury is a little bit concerning. He was practicing Wednesday, and then all of a sudden a non-participant yesterday. So today is going to tell us a lot about his status for the game. I do expect Coleman, though, to be back in the lineup. As Coach pointed out earlier in the week, because it was a short week, he was down again. They just went with the same guys who all performed well in the Tampa Bay game, so you totally understand it. But I think they're going to need his physical presence in this game, not only in terms of run blocking, but in terms of posting up on some of these corners who aren't afraid to use their hands and rough you up and dare officials to throw flags. Chris Brown with us on the Western Hotline. Thank you, Chris. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk on Monday. Yeah, to you as well. Enjoy the game. Chris Brown with us. He'll have the call on Sunday for Bills and Steelers. A building the Bills have won once in ever. Acrisure Stadium.
I'm kind of actually not happy that I know the name that quickly now. It's Heinz Field. Acrisure Stadium. Just a disastrous name change. But I guess I've picked up on it after a few years. Yeah, the last two Steeler quarterbacks to lose to the Bills in the regular season are Duck Hodges and Terry Bradshaw. No Roethlisberger. They never beat Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. In fact, did Roethlisberger ever... He beat the Bills here in the opener. Man, did the Bills ever beat Roethlisberger? I don't think they did. 2005? Well, we all remember that one. He didn't play. That was Tommy Maddox and the Steelers' backups. 2007 was Pittsburgh. 2010, 2013, 2016. Yeah, I don't think Roethlisberger ever lost to the Bills in his entire career. That's a potential trivia game. Quarterbacks that went undefeated against the Bills in their career. I wonder who'd be the next best name on that list. Anyways, Bills and Steelers on Sunday. 803-0550. Plenty of time for your phone calls now on your expectation for this game. And also whether the Chiefs being down and now staring at a possibility of missing the playoffs after losing yesterday changes your expectation for the Bills. I know it's not directly what they're doing on the field, but the two teams that they have lost to in the postseason during Sean McDermott and Josh Allen's heyday here are probably both going to miss